Welcome to Dangerous Wisdom, a journey into mystery and a gateway to the mind of nature and the nature of mind. This is Dr. Nikos, your friendly neighborhood soul doctor, happy to be here with you so that together we can create a culture of wisdom, love, and beauty. Auspicious interbeing to you and yours, my friends. Koinos Hermes, always a deep bow to Sophia. And my friends, prepare yourselves for Dharmageddon, a cosmic expansion of love wisdom. This is the best episode of Dangerous Wisdom yet. If I were interviewing the US president, I would not be as excited as I am right now. If I were interviewing a rock star, I wouldn't be as excited as I am right now. Maybe if I were a Swiftie and I were going to be interviewing Taylor Swift, I might be as excited as I am now, because our guest today is a rock star of philosophy, a lion of the Dharma, and a unicorn of love wisdom. Our guest is the inimitable Robert A.F. Thurman. Now, not enough people know just how awesome Bob Thurman is. He's 51 flavors of fabulous. He's the Dalai Lama's right-hand man on Turtle Island, aka America or Akleshika. He has done tremendous work as an exceptional scholar and teacher. He taught at Amherst briefly, then at Columbia for many years, where he not only helped students to learn philosophy, but mentored many new scholars through the process of earning a doctoral degree. Through his work at Tibet House and the Mind and Life conferences, Menla Retreat, the Treasury of Buddhist Sciences, and other venues and vehicles, he has helped raise awareness about Buddhist philosophy and Tibetan culture. He is also a gifted linguist, becoming fluent in Tibetan in a matter of weeks, though I know he would probably say he continues to learn. He is also fluent in Sanskrit and other languages, and his translations are the go-to translations. If Bob translated it, you should read it, unless it's very above your level, which is okay. If it came from his work as the head of the Treasury of Buddhist Sciences, you should also read it if you can. And we'll put some links in the show notes. Now, I strongly recommend reading his translation of the Vimalakirti Sutra, which is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I have a few of his books here. His book, his translation of the Tibetan Book of Liberation Upon Hearing in the Between, which is mistranslated as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This is fantastic. The introduction alone is so, so valuable, as Bob's work always is, really. And it's really, he's a jazz man of words and thinks about word choice, not only with the care that any good translator takes, but with the passion for love wisdom, the passion for philosophy that a real philosopher exhibits. And I just always delight in his turns of phrase. Most recently, the great connection as the translation for Dzogchen. And he can do that because he understands Buddhist philosophy far more intimately, really, than I think most dominant culture philosophers understand the philosophies of the dominant culture. And I say that because he effectively lived for a monk for many years, different accounts in his biographical information, sometimes just around 2 or 3, and then formally for maybe about 2 years. And then he received training from high-level teachers in a curriculum that I would suggest rivals by far the curriculum of philosophical training in the universities of the dominant culture. And as part of that, he even trained in Tibetan medicine, which is holistic and deeply philosophically informed, and went on to get a PhD from Harvard. He's translated, authored, or co-authored, I don't know, over 24 books. I'm going to recommend 2 others right now. This one is The Central Philosophy of Tibet. This is one that will probably be a little bit over your head, but that's okay. There is online. First of all, the introduction in this book is such an incredibly skillful kind of overview of Buddhist philosophy. It's mind-blowing how well he did this. And this is a very difficult text, notorious in the Tibetan culture for being challenging. And Bob just, I mean, I can't say for sure in terms of Tibetan, but it's a beautiful book. And there is a free lecture. I think somebody recorded your lectures at Columbia, and there's like maybe 8 of them. So you can get some help. I'm going to go through those myself. Most recently, Wisdom is Bliss. Oh man, this is good. You gotta read this book. If you're new to philosophy at all, read this book. If you're new to Buddhist philosophy, but even if you're experienced, because what I love about this book, it reminded me a little bit of D.T. Suzuki. I was lucky to not D.T. Suzuki, but Suzuki Roshi, because when I was lucky enough to read Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind before really getting into deep practice of philosophy. And so it's a beautiful book. But then once you study and you read Dogen, who's a great genius, you realize, oh my gosh, there's this whole other layer where Suzuki's genius in part is giving Dogen, giving like this beautiful exposition of Dogen without being like fancy pants about it, not academic. And that was the case with this book. So there's like a double layer. If you're experienced with philosophy, to see what Bob is doing is just such a joy. I like slowed down to molasses pace as the book was ending because I didn't want it to end. Okay. So Bob Thurman, welcome to the
Well,
Dangerous
thank
Wisdom
you.
podcast. This is the best. I'm so
I'm
excited.
so surprised. I mean, you're too kind, first of all, but also in a humorous way, and you definitely have studied, and so that really does please me, I have to say. And you're very, very kind. And I always admire people who read Central Philosophy of Tibet because it was, which was originally called Speech of Gold.
I know, yeah.
Because it's known as which relates to a Tibetan story about how it was written. A vision Tsongkhapa had when he wrote that book. He has a silver book and a golden book on the philosophical topic of the deepest one of the centrist, what I call the centrist philosophy. And so I respect philosophers who have read it. And I'm dying for philosophers of what you call the dominant culture to revive philosophy, which has been killed by the pathetically poor philosophy of scientists who think they don't have to be trained in philosophy, which is actually metaphysical philosophy is the foundation of science. And without being trained in it and having a really deep understanding about it, you're going to make a really stupid bunch of interpretations of the wonderful data that modern scientists do get, materialist scientists do get, but then they're completely imprisoned in the dogma of materialism, where they are at the moment, have been for some time, and which is really too bad. In their desperate attempt to escape God and escape the Inquisition and all this, Giordano Bruno's fate and Galileo's muzzling and so on. They really stuck on materialism, which is really too bad. And I have seen a number in my 50 years or so of teaching and studying. I have seen a number of dominant culture trained philosophers discover Buddhist philosophy, Dharmakirti, Nagarjuna, especially from the Indians, and filtered through the brilliance of the many Tibetan devotees and interpreters and advancers of that, and suddenly bring metaphysics back to life and realize that it was never really killed off. It was just dogmaed away, by the materialist thing. Where the ridiculous mistake that someone like the Consilience guy at Harvard, the E.O. Wilson and these people make, which is they think that by saying that nothingness is the destiny of life and the sort of substratum of life, they are making a dogma, mistaking a dogma for a discovery. They think that's a discovered fact or something. They assure people of it and they treat it as if it was established fact, when actually it's nothing but dogma. Since any idiot will tell you, which is always my starting point nowadays, that nothing is nothing, and therefore no one's going to ever discover it. And that's its nature, is it's just a concept,
Yeah.
and it's referring to what is not there. So there's no location, it's not a destination, it's not a substratum, it's nothing, actually.
Yeah.
Big now news flash, nothing is nothing. So no one's going to ever be nothing. No one ever came from nothing. It's not a problem, And that's too bad because, the wonderful acumen and patience and perseverance and yogic lab experience, you could say, that materialist scientists have accumulated over centuries now, since the Western Enlightenment, is if it is put to work in like the Indian inner science, which is in the mind and in the mental zone, instead of just further out in the galaxies, then they will discover many more marvelous things, and which will be scientific. They're not going to discover some dogma that's going to solve everything, but they're going to really gain understanding. So I'm delighted to speak to you, who are, as I say, I think of you as a Greek philosopher.
Yeah.
And the Greeks were very interactive and connected to the Indian through the Persian toll roads.
Absolutely.
And it isn't like it was all just invented in Greece,
Yeah, well, I don't know. Did you see that the person who did the beautiful work of kind of forensic scholarship showing that it's very, very likely, after all, that Hume really did have exposure to Buddhist philosophy through the Jesuits?
Yeah,
It's really amazing because all this time we've all thought, you get taught as an undergraduate, oh, look, isn't this interesting how similar it is? And meanwhile, it turns out he might have actually been exposed to somebody's work who it studied in detail in Tibet
yes.
and brought back the whole thing. And it was in a library in France where Hume had spent like
Oh,
an
Descartes.
extended period.
Is this a which
Hume.
one?
Hume, you
Oh,
know how Hume's bundle theory of the self, people often say, oh, isn't that kind of similar to Buddhist philosophy? The Hume
oh,
had
Hume.
had the
Yes, right, right,
David
right.
Hume. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. He
Did you
did.
see that there was a woman who really traced this down? She did a lot of extraordinary work.
That's
In fact,
right. I haven't read that book. That is really great. That you're.
yeah, yeah. No,
What's
it's
her
really
name?
good.
What's the name? What's her name?
Oh, good. I actually wanted to get her on the podcast, and I've forgotten, but because I contacted her like about a year ago and just I didn't follow up with it. But anyway, I will send it to
Please
you, and
let
I'll
me
put a
know
link
that.
for people
I
too.
remember hearing about it, and then
Yeah,
I forgot to track it down, and I would
it's
really.
really cool. Yeah, it's really
I
cool.
think it's very good. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing, actually, you brought up several things that I would love to touch on. One of them would be I was reminded recently when I was reading your book of Evan Thompson's, I think it's still his most recent, but I know he's coming out with another book that's actually a little critical of science. But he published a book, your former student, on why I'm not a Buddhist?
Well, yeah, but I didn't read it.
No, I know. I wasn't going to read it either. I came across it by accident because I just happened to see an interview by him in my YouTube feed. And I listened to it. And like whenever Lopez wrote the book about the Buddha scientist,
Oh, how he buried
y-
him. Yeah.
right, and yeah, right, and I wanted to write a book called the academic Buddha, which doesn't exist. It's this projection because that's his argument. The scientific Buddha doesn't exist. It's a projection of European
I know. I know.
consciousness. So Evan picks this up, and so I wanted to ask you, but I figured you wouldn't necessarily read it. And Evan is obviously a very intelligent guy, and so some of the moves that he's making are almost surprising to me because I think like it's as if it seems like there's a kind of obvious confusion. But let's just say this. So he is definitely respecting all the scholarship on what's called Buddhist modernism, and I'll ask you
Yeah.
for everybody to say
Yeah.
how you see that. And he
Yeah.
also has this term that he uses, Buddhist exceptionalism. And
Mm-hmm.
and what he's saying is, so in many ways, a person who agrees with Evan, and there are people who would agree with him, would
Yes.
say, well, Bob Thurman is like the poster child of Buddhist modernism and Buddhist exceptionalism, right? And this camp wants to say, look, Buddha was not a scientist. Buddhist philosophy is not scientific, and
Right.
it's not helpful to say so for various. Evan is his intention is supposedly to move the conversation forward, but I just wanted to ask you first, can you tell people, the audience, how you would explain Buddhist modernism and Buddhist
Right.
exceptionalism, and then
Right.
you can kind of talk about why you don't think it
Sure.
applies.
Sure. Well, I don't really go for the Buddhist modernism thing, actually, but because I think modernism, people who are think modern are part of the Western delusion that where we are in life, on the planet, is we are at the summit of human understanding of reality. Nobody has ever understood reality like we understand it, right? We really know better than anybody. We may
And
be
we in the
able,
dominant culture in particular.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We are the dominant culture of the planet, and
Y-
we're the leftover of the British Empire and the other European empires. And we are my hearing aid is also complaining to me that it's running out of its battery. I'm just while I'm telling this. And so we know more than anybody ever did, and we sort of bury the embarrassing fact that we are briskly and jollily destroying the planet. and but actually we are mature, so therefore we know that it doesn't really matter that we destroy it because it's really nothing anyway, and once we're all dead, we'll never know, and we'll never know that we ever lived because our consciousness will revert to the substratum, which is nothingness. And we are brave existentialists, and we don't mind being nothing. We think in fact, it's liberating and thrilling. And it's liberating us to the extent that we just keep burning the fuels and we keep polluting everything. and killing anybody who protests, and anybody who wants to stay connected to nature, and that'll be that. And anyway, it's probably the real exceptionalism is we're the only planet in the universe where this human accident ever happened. And once it's over, then never mind. There is no mind after all. And actually, therefore, we are far from being the most wise culture that ever has existed. We are the most insane culture that ever existed as a dominant culture, and we're ruining the planet. And besides one Holocaust after another, and we could press all the A bombs, except I think probably none of them work because the plutonium has not been renewed every biannually as it's supposed to be, and they probably won't work, luckily. But so the idea that the modern is superior is, in my view, wrong. But there are some aspects that are great, and I think it might turn out to be that case if we can take the next step and realize that time is relevant, relative, just like space, and that there may be people who had a higher consciousness a long time ago, who were better scientists, who were better philosophers in other cultures, and especially the mother culture that we know about on the planet, language-wise, is the Indian one, where they have the highest wealth and the highest concentration of population and the most openness of hierarchy in history until the Westerners came in and started conquering it because they became most peaceful, relatively speaking. So I just don't get into the whole modernist. That's why I didn't bother to read Evan's book, because Evan, like his dad, was very, Eurocentric, and Christocentric also. And so it's like the Steinerians, they couldn't take the theosophical people, so they did anthroposophy, because Jesus had to be superior to Moses and Yajnavalkya and Buddha and Confucius and Lao Tzu, whoever it was. He couldn't be on an even plane with the other great people of humanity. And I love Toynbee, on the other hand, who pointed out in the 20th century that the most important event of the 20th century culturally was the meeting of the so-called dominant culture, which is the colonial culture of the empire, with the Buddhist culture, because the Buddhist culture was the most advanced of the axial age cultures, which we are still in a way part of from the Greco-Judaic period, in the 5th century before the Common Era. And India, the great ethical and philosophical and scientific reformers of mid first millennium BCE India were able to get away with more of the axial age transformations than any of the other cultures in Eurasia, And Toynbee comes up with that thesis in his 12-volume study of world history, and then his summary of that called Mankind and Mother Earth. And he mentioned offhand at Wellesley College in the 1970s, before he passed away, that would be ultimately the encounter of this so-called dominant materialist culture, destructive culture, with the ancient, more balanced culture of the mid-first millennium. Not particularly only Buddha, but nowadays I'm very much on His Holiness the Dalai Lama's bandwagon of trying to bring back the full conversation of the Indian Adhyatma Vidya, or inner science, which is the king of the sciences. There's the inner science, because the human mind is the best supercomputer that ever was invented and evolved. And human beings are like better than gods because they're smart as the gods, but they are also vulnerable. So they take the quest of reality and of meaning, understanding of reality and of meaning, more seriously than the gods do, who fritter away their time partying and blissing out, but are also, of course, very intelligent. Therefore, the gods like enlightened yogis, and all of them, and not just the Buddhist ones. And Buddha wasn't a Buddhist, for that matter. He was an enlightened person. And there was no Buddhism when he was there. It was just the quest of reality, which is what science is. Their claim, those guys, they say, oh no, science is materialism. If you don't have the dogma of materialism, you're not a scientist. Well, that's just their declaration. That's not nature didn't tell them that. Nobody told them that. And that's really false anyway, because they started their observation of nature thinking that nature was God's message to them, people like Newton and Bacon and these people. And most of the scientists, they go to church or synagogue or someplace, and Einstein says God does not play dice, and he didn't want to deal with a radical uncertainty. He could have managed relativism, which is the higher philosophical, open-minded way of being, which is the true science, where you really do data and experience and experiment do trump theory. And so Buddha's philosophy is open-minded, is like the dialectic of Socrates, where he says, well, yeah, really in that dogmatic way that you people know things, I don't know anything, but then let's look at what you think you know, and then he will find the absurdities in it, and you'll be liberated from that, Themistocles or whoever it was, which is the same thing what Buddha was doing, exactly the same. And in his highest form, he wasn't saying the dogma of this or the dogma of that. There was no dogma. There was only experience, finally, and beyond language, beyond mathematics, especially, which is the mystical language of the scientists, because they have made the dogma that reality is only quantities, then their calculation of what the quantities is what their job is. And meanwhile, they're confronting the issue of infinity, which means you'll never get to the end of the calculating. So they've accepted and even reified and deified their pursuit of ever-expanding zones of ignorance, rather than the idea that could be an experiential understanding beyond concept and beyond mathematics, beyond everything, of the nature of reality, because after all, we are part of reality, all of us. Mm-hmm. And so I just don't even, that to me is just another defense of their privilege. And in the dominant culture, the privilege of the people with salaries, part of endowed institutions, tax deductions, and pontificating like high priests and acting like they're the authorities of everything, backing up the governments with the weapons and the research for the weapons and so forth, and then continuing in the ridiculous waste. Right now, we're in an insane position where the combined defense budgets of all the countries on the planet are easily 10 times more than needed to completely have a clean energy system within 5 years. Totally. If you spend all that money on improving the energy system and the agricultural system and the healing systems and the educational systems, we would be in paradise, actually, in no time. And all it would mean would be really, truly be democratic, where no dictator can take control with their narcissistic bad temper and cause the death of millions and millions of people. It just would not be possible. And then there will be imperfections and problems and many things, but we won't destroy the planet anymore. We won't be killing each other anymore over some patch of desert or something that we're going to irrigate, and everything will be fine. And so that shows that and also the other thing about materialism is ethics. And the problem with Darwin, who was an absolute wonderful saintly person, I love Darwin. I think he was a great enlightened person himself, but he was also constrained by the dogma of materialism, where he couldn't really define the fittest as the interconnectedness of beings. It's what really makes for our triumph and our shaping of nature into something that into keeping its beauty and its balance and its life-supporting ability, and traveling throughout the galaxies mentally in super subtle mental forms, mental and physical, subtle physical forms, which they did in ancient time, and develop our powers of clairvoyance, telepathy, and things like that all brains have, actually. It's not even something extraordinary. And that's what we should all be doing, and we will be. I'm convinced actually that we will be. I'm very optimistic that these idiots will fail to destroy everything, because finally they will listen to their wives and their daughters, and they will finally decide that it's not worth it slaughtering everybody just to have a bigger territory or some stupid, old-fashioned, ridiculous thing haunted by the past. They will actually be practical and realistic. And I hold out for Dalai Lama's holdout that people will find the sanity that human intelligence wants us to find, and we will. So
Yeah.
so I don't even get into that with those guys. They're just defending the West, and they're defending their own privilege of their position. And I didn't attack it too much because I was also employed. I had to have a job. I was not wealthy, and I couldn't just live and hang out, and translate all of Tsongkhapa's books as I would have liked to, and all of Nagarjuna's work. In a way, you see, what's wrong with it? I am pleased, I must admit. Usually, I don't fall for flattery, but I am pleased when someone appreciates my translation, because I really do think that there's a new era of translation that we have to deal with. And I'm not perfect in it, but I think I'm the leader in that, which is where we're dealing with this stuff as stuff that is vital to our own lives, that it is vital to our own science, that it is part of surviving, actually. So it's very high priority, rather than museum thing of some old thing, some dumb people who were in the past, and they didn't have subways, they didn't have A-bombs, and they didn't have penicillin or something, and therefore nothing they say would be of any use to us, because they don't know what's real, because they didn't have dollar bills, like, forget about, and even they were conquered even by the Europeans and totally subjugated, and the Europeans cut the thumbs off all the cotton weavers in India so they could have mills in England, with their cotton, raw cotton, and so therefore they are inferior, and that's what that whole modernist thing, and poor Don Lopez, who's a great guy and very nice, but he's been lamenting for 40 years that he didn't become a Shakespeare scholar, so he could be like a Harold Bloom or somebody really famous among academics, instead of someone who is an expert in a very niche field in the West, very marginal field in the West. Buddhist studies. And I love to tease them. I tease them, all the Buddhist studies people. I love to tease, but they do Buddhist studies. But the one cardinal, like card making them a member of the Buddhist studies community is there's no such thing as a Buddha.
Yeah.
There's no higher consciousness, no enlightened consciousness, not possible. Just the brain, which we're exploring with probes and and fMRIs and things, and therefore they're only studying what weird people who think there was a Buddha, who are doing sort of primitive, pre-modern, naive, superstitious things like meditating and doing these things, with thinking that somebody got enlightened once, which of course we know is not true, because they didn't invent subways. They didn't put subways in Kapilavastu, and that's just so pathetic, and so pathetically provincial. I feel, that I just can't bother with it. And if someone in the future will come along and will actually really study these things and restore philosophy, they killed philosophy. Yeah. Unbelievable. I recently saw this thing. I couldn't believe my ears. It's a YouTube conversation between Neil deGrasse Tyson and Dawkins, I think. And it's at Howard University. And it's just chit chat, triumphalist chit chat about we're so smart and we're about to figure this and that out, dark matter, and we got it, blah, blah, blah. Nothing, just trivial conversation, actually. And then somebody holds up their question and congratulates them in the audience and says, you're right, because they asked them about philosophy, and they said, well, philosophy is like finished. It's just like literary criticism and art history and things like that. No more metaphysics. And we don't need that. We're measuring everything in the universe.
Neil deGrasse Tyson said this?
About how we interpret our data. And then this guy says, it's wonderful to hear this. We're so excited, here at Howard. I think it was Howard. We're just about to abolish the philosophy department because it's so useless. And I was really astounded. And Neil deGrasse is a beautiful guy. He's a great entertainer. He's the new Carl Sagan, blah, blah. Dawkins was aptly, I thought, characterized by somebody at Harvard as the moral majority guy. What was his name? The Christian preacher, who founded Liberty University. Oh, Larry Falwell. He's the Larry Falwell of the materialists, he says. Dawkins.
Okay.
And these guys they're celebrating themselves, and they're encouraging people in this idea that that the human mind is incapable of thinking through a close approximation to reality, and then being able to use that reasoning and that thought to experience reality beyond even the thought, beyond even the conceptualizing thought, but bringing conceptualizing thought to that level of inquiry and doubt where it explodes the trivialities and it comes to a wide open experience of the nature of reality, which is, of course, the thing that the Taoists and the Buddhists and the Hindus all did to varying degrees in Asia in the past, far superior to them. And then we were killing ourselves with wars and freaking out and bankrupting and having terrible poor people by spending all the money on this machinery of destruction. And yet we think we don't need to, we think that the superior group is the group that conquered the gentler people. And the gentler people are therefore automatically inferior because they're gentle. Yeah. And that's just total mistake, total confusion.
Yeah.
And so I can't really bother about that, you know. If I'm proud to be a poster child of saying, which is what attracted me to Buddhism, was not religion, actually, and to the study of Buddha, was not religion. It was science. And it was the idea that it would be possible to understand the world and to understand your emotions and to be a yogi of your emotions and your deep, even your and transform even your instincts. And you know what I had to do as an employee of the elite Amherst College and then Columbia University for 51 years, I had to teach a course like Darwin, Marx, and Freud, and you know, all three of which are sort of your passport to modernism and being like a real person, you know, academically or whatever, business in any way. All of which tell you that you are unable to understand the world and that you have to therefore just obey somebody else who tells you what to do. And you are automatically enshrined and deified. Your ignorance is deified, actually. And you're scared even of yourself. Freud makes you scared of your unconscious. It's going to make you, instead of being a nice Dr. Jekyll, you're going to be Mr. Hyde, you know. Darwin makes you scared of your genes, what they might do to you after you've dumped them wherever it is. You never know, you know, someone will come and eat you. And but he's just the nicer of the other two. And then Marx makes you scared because it's whatever you think is just whatever class you're in, you know, and it's all hierarchy, dominance of other people.
But he at least lets you out of it, right? I mean, he's got at least
that. They completely make you helpless, in short. All three of them, you end up feeling helpless in the society, in the universe, and afraid of the universe, which is terrorized by your own culture and your own government and your own authorities. And that's what people are. And they try to, and now there are some in our country trying to break out of it. And I think we will succeed, actually. We're going to. Ukrainians are going to defeat that lunatic. And his employee, the Trump guy, who is a Russian asset, absolutely money laundering specialist, in real estate money laundering specialist since the 80s. It's that you don't have to go read the Mueller memo or have taped the phone call. He's 100% trying to stop this idea that that democracy works, that the human being, including the Chinese human beings, love to be free. Confucius loved freedom. He was not into like making fortune cookies or something. That's not his job, you know. And we are trying to push the militarized, dominant culture into thinking that way. And that's our job. That's why we came and got reborn here, including a Greek philosopher like you living in Santa Cruz. That even called Greek mountains. Yeah, with the dragon and the wind horse.
Yeah.
And the circle.
We were both drawn to Buddhist philosophy that really for the same reasons. I mean, it's the same thing that you would be drawn to in Greek philosophy, and there is that unity. That, you know, it was natural philosophy.
The key thing is not really Buddhist. In other words, when you say Buddhist, they automatically think it's a religious philosophy, mainly something controlled by something you're supposed to have credo and supposed to believe in.
Right.
But it's not. It is open, because what the Buddhist thing is, enlightenment is open-mindedness, precisely. And therefore, you're not supposed to believe anything. You're supposed to use doubt until your mind gets blown by the amazing nature of reality beyond our ability to describe it.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that Buddha as philosopher, not Buddha. That's my point. Is that you and I were drawn to Buddha as philosopher, not as
Yes,
some kind of
and
superior.
I consider philosophers scientists.
Right. Yes. Well, but they would be the
Biggest
same
scientist was
in the
engineer.
dominant culture, right? The scientist and philosopher were always the same. Newton was a natural philosopher, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's still the case. And the people who live under dogma are not really scientists. They're not
Right.
doing their own Popperian methodology of letting experience trump theory, which
Yeah.
is the key to the Western Enlightenment. And the Buddhist translators have it so bad. You know what they do now? The ones who are doing so, they have banned the word enlightenment. You can only say awakening, awakening. You know, the Mormons were awakened. You know, you have the Great Awakening of Western New York State in the 1830s. I mean, the Tibetan Buddha can mean awakening, and it can mean expanding to omniscience, actually. And the Tibetans did it beautifully. They translated it Sangye. Sang means to purify sleepwalking consciousness to a higher consciousness. And Ge means expanding that higher consciousness to know everything necessary for life.
Mm.
And you know, like using omniscience, like you would use omnivore, being able in principle to eat everything, you know, it doesn't mean you already ate it all. It means that you're ready to eat it, you know, in some way, you know,
Yeah.
because you are one with it, actually, because you in reality are on intimate terms, you know. That's the key thing. And you have the energy of all reality behind you to
Yeah.
meet the energy of reality. And so, you know, I loved him. I mean, Evan was great. He wasn't really ever studied with me. His dad was a friend, and he was a friend, and he was a young prodigy type of guy, and in the Lindisfarne community, you know. But they were, you know, they were always Western. Oh yeah, because Jesus is the only one, and the Western science and the West, you know. And they were the dumb. They still, although the Edge of History of William Thompson originally was a brilliant, wonderful book. But then he just was stuck in his, we know better, you know. And of course, he had Dick Baker, who kind of got him pissed off about Buddhism after a while, you know. It was
Yeah.
by his,
Sure.
not by
Understandable.
his,
Yeah.
Dick had good sides to him, but his behavior was not so good because he made the mistake that people make about these enlightenment-oriented traditions, that once you're enlightened, you can do whatever you feel like doing because you can do no wrong, you know.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no, you know, about that one. You know? Meanwhile, if you're interacting with others, they need ethical dealings and interactions, you know, and you can't harm them actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what you do, then you're showing that you got stuck in the demon ghost cave, as Tom Clear's brilliant translation of the Heikigan Roku says. You know, when you think you are enlightened, that's just deadly. My joke about that is, if you go around thinking you're enlightened, then you're forced to fart Chanel number 5. And if you can't, then you're stuck in a terrible vice. If it doesn't come out like that, it's really too bad. Anyway, I love them all. So I don't mean to put them down, but they really need to question more this so-called dominant culture, how destructive it is.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really on the warpath about it now that I finally just have a pension so I can survive without having to sort of self-censor, you know,
Yeah.
to any extent. I didn't really much do it, but you do it, you know. And that doesn't mean if I hadn't done that, I would rather be converting people to Buddhism. Actually, I really appreciate academia, and I have to give the Christians some credit for that. That the academia you don't proselytize, you know, and if you do religious studies or any kind of thing, you just use reason, and people have to develop critical understanding. But they don't do that about themselves, about their materialist dogma, because they can make the weapons, and they always were making the weapons. You know, Da Vinci was making fortifications for the people in Milan and so on. You know, and cannons and designing airplanes to bomb people and so forth. You know, that's how they had their livelihood, but not by challenging the culture to the extent of how it should be challenged, you know. But that's very serious now. We're really at an end game if we care about our grandchildren, even children. and if you're younger, even yourself, then we have to really stand. And this book, there was a wonderful little book that some Harvard scientist and some other sociologist or historian or somebody, they wrote a joint thing, a very short pamphlet-like book, but it had a wide circulation for a little while, which is written as if it was at the end of the 21st century, I think, or 20th century. And when things were really sinking, and billions had died, and the planet was really under threat, serious threat, more, and so on. And it was an analysis of why the scientists couldn't change the minds of the politicians and the corporate people in this turn of the 20th to 21st, the 20th to 21st century, how they couldn't change their mind, why they couldn't do it. The 14,000 scientists with the Al Gore and Inconvenient Truth and the COP meetings and so forth, but they failed to stop them destroying themselves. Why was it that they couldn't? And I think it has to do with their being stuck in this high priest role of the dominant culture and making on the side, DARPA, the internet was a web made for the military, right? And AI is the military funding and so on. And they think and it's going to be funding, fueling, guiding autonomous weapons. They're so scared of it. And meanwhile, they don't teach the large language model, even Greek, much less not Sanskrit or Tibetan. It's all English. It's all language of empire. That's what the large language model is. It's just English. Yeah. Not a penny spent on another language that maybe had a little different notion of subject and object embedded in the language. Not a penny. But I think so they do all these things. Like, I've been reading a wonderful book that I don't know if you know the book, you would love it. Dennis Overbye, B-Y-E at the end, Overbye, and it's called The Lonely Hearts of the Cosmos. And it's about the cosmologists, the astrophysicists, cosmologists, all the way back from Hubble, before he had the telescope, the name Hubble guy, Palomar, or Sandage, and all these people, and then Einstein, and then they don't so much go into quantum so far. He is still the science reviewer for the New York Times, who therefore has interviewed Hawking, all of these people, black holes and everything. And so he gives a history of their whole interaction with each other and how they fight over the theories and their points of interpretation. He does it taking them seriously and respecting them, but in a way there's a sort of lightness about it, where he shows their egos and their guesses and their hunches and how that actually it's kind of, they are the lonely hearts of the cosmos, sitting up there in their observatories, trying to figure out the Andromeda galaxy, the spin ratio, and from that they're going to calculate this infinite universe. And in a way, it really shows you what a human enterprise it is. Actually, it's really brilliant. The discovery of the whole dark matter and dark energy thing, which is really crazy, all this exploration and all this, we know everything, and we're about to we're the authorities on everything. We can tell you how to live and what to do, and we're going to solve it all, etc. And meanwhile, 97 to 99% of it we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, or 95, but yeah, exactly. It's
but even
huge.
It's almost 99 from the fact, the way that what's visible.
Yeah,
it's such a small percentage, and some of them say it's 100 times more as the dark mass.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they haven't even thought. And I want the Nobel Prize for science, because I'm going to ask you this question: there are two types of invisible things. What are the two? Dark is one of them. What's the other one?
It's an invisible existing thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, two types of invisible things. One is dark matter, and
dark, anything dark we can't see, right?
Anything dark we can't see. I guess anything clear, totally transparent.
Yes,
we're truly
but they didn't. Transparency.
Yeah.
Clear light,
Yeah, the
clear transparency. It's not light, actually.
Right.
Its analogy is dawn, twilight, pre-dawn, twilight.
Right.
And so it's beyond light and dark duality, in other words. So it's invisible, actually.
Yeah,
but yet it's not only 99, it's 100% of everything. Even matter, clear light avoidance. It's all the matter. It's the relativity of the
Yeah.
full scale relativity. And I believe Einstein touches on it with this idea of MC squared, this inconceivable number. And what is c squared anyway? What is c is the speed of light? Speed of light itself is a ratio. It isn't actually really just a number that it deals with a certain quantity. It's a ratio between position and location and momentum. And to square it, it's like a fantasy, actually. 187,000 miles per second, but it isn't a regular number because it's a ratio. So there's a time and a space element in it. And then what? Then you couldn't go faster because then the mass of the light becomes infinite. But you can't become infinite at a speed because you never reach infinity. So that means by become infinite means you have initially been infinite. You're simply open to what is actually always were. And light is like something coming, pinpricks coming through somehow from this infinity. And he touches that, I think, Einstein does. He touches that. The idea of infinite mass. Now they are in the thing where there is no way, nothing that confirms mass. The whole thing about Higgs boson. It's just a double, triple inference of explosive fragments of this and that because of the other, and then it's all surrounded by dark matter anyway. So don't really hold us to it, So there's still a mystery, There's still uncertainty. In other words, it's not like they finally caught the pinprick. That's the reality. The pinprick reality is not there. XYZ is not there. That's the whole point of it. It's a concept, right? So Einstein knew that. And he used all the math, which is the mystical language of the high priest, the mumbo jumbo language. But he knew that I heard in the I haven't seen the movie yet, but I heard there's a wonderful remark in the movie. The A-bomb guy,
Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer, and that he and Einstein turned to each other in some case, but I haven't seen it, so I don't know what the circumstance is. But that they turn to each other and they say, well, actually, I know that you agree with me and we both disdain mathematics. I hope that's there, and I hope I can't wait to see the movie, but I have not been able to. I've been too busy being wasting my time. So anyway, we have to be, if they weren't doing all that pretension, just about to calculate the age of it, we're just about to this and that bunch of irrelevant stuff when we're trying to stop, these wars and these genocides and this horrible thing, and the planet side, terra side that we're engaged in, and if they were really putting their effort into what is relatively right in front of them, and all of them were leaving Harvard and MIT and going and chaining themselves to Exxon doorway and to White House doorway and to Senate and Congress doorways, and all of them were going with Bill McKibben. But every country on the planet, there would be change, They became existential scientists, really saying, you have to stop. You people who are making money out of this self-destruction, that's what we're telling you what you're doing, and you must stop this now. We're not just we're not sure that we'll make a miracle for you later and so on. We're not going to do that. We're going to, you just have to stop now. Go to Dubai and say it's great. You guys have some great buildings now, tall buildings now. You have to heat them some other way, cool them and heat them some other way.
Yeah.
But you can't. You have a lot of sunshine there.
Well, now they have the line. They're building the line.
Right.
Yeah. So in part, what this book is a kind of a revolution back toward philosophy. And it is saying also, I think, because we're afraid that if we give up everything, we're not going to be happy because we're kind of addicted to materialism in an important way.
That's right. That's right.
And you're saying in this book in part that if you really want happiness, if you turn away from all this confusion that we're creating through science and technology and destruction, you'll find actual bliss. You can find actual joy. And also,
that's what reality is.
that's what it is. That's
reality
right. Yeah.
is the plenitude. It's a white hole I love Carlo Rovelli nowadays. It's a giant white hole. It's not a bunch of black holes leaking a little thermal radiation. It's a giant white hole, clear light. You take the paradox, of energy, and you think of infinite energy. And if energy is infinite, it's not going to do anything. So it will be indiscernible because on its own, it's not doing anything. But then amazingly, you can live. In other words, you feel you don't have quite enough. You need some food, you need some oxygen, and it's just there. It's a plenum. It's there. So this terror of the universe is and terror of death and terror of everything is causing this scarcity mentality. And in the context of Buddhists, the reason I call it Wisdom of Bliss, actually, my original working title was Buddhas Have More Fun. That was my original. But I dropped it at the editors with the editor's strong encouragement because the modernist Western mind won't hear Buddha without thinking Buddhist. So they'll think it's some religious thing. Oh yeah, we're the right religion. No, Buddhas have more fun. Means someone who's fully open-minded, who's not afraid of death, who thinks of life as amitayas, infinite life, and there'll be more life. And if they're loving and happy and open-minded, then bliss will flood into them at death, even. Like that poor guy, Grasshopper. Remember Grasshopper? The actor who played Grasshopper? Kung Fu. Kung Fu.
David Carradine.
Strangled himself in a hotel room in Thailand. Because he was playing the Marquis de Sade thing of getting near death to have a bigger bliss,
Yeah, right.
He didn't know about tantric yoga.
Yeah,
so,
right. Yeah.
So he stupidly, and probably some of the girl there from the bar downstairs probably just, mistimed it or something, or tripped, didn't unplug the rope in time, the velvet rope or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Poor guy. So the point is, if reality is bliss, then if you know reality, which you can, which wisdom does, non-conceptual, trans-conceptually know it, although wisdom leads to that trans-conceptual by getting the concepts all lined up into the great doubt, as they say in Zen, or into the prasangika, madhyamaka, dialecticist centrist, as I have tried to translate it. And in honor of dialectics, I just said dialecticist. So like a dialectic, so not locked into that. They're capable of ordinary, autonomous reasoning or dogmaticist reasoning. And I call the Swatantrikas dogmaticist, And that was, Don Lopez was a dogmaticist. And he was very annoyed with Chandrakirti and me and felt it was being unfair to the dogmaticists, and calling them dogmaticists. But anyway, so that's modernism. That's modern Buddhism. But that's not modern Buddhism. That's modern science, Indian inner science in a modern way. And the Dalai Lama's thing that I'm doing now is, I think Patanjali is a Buddha. Panini was a Buddha. Socrates was a Buddha. So these higher intelligent beings came down as a team. Jesus is a Buddha. Moses was a Buddha. Eye for an eye, I mean, if they take your eye by some means, you don't obliterate 10 million of them. You just ask for an eye back, or a payment, to buy an artificial intelligent eye or something, whatever. I'm just saying proportional. Even that's in the direction of nonviolence, of ahimsa, and it's wonderful. And so anyway. That's the thing. But we have to get tougher with them, I think, really. I can't take this Richard Dawkins business and, Neil deGrasse. And once they make the shift, like James Derlinger, did you ever run into James? He did some nice translations and essays about Chandrakirti and Vasubandhu and this and that.
I think so.
And he was tenured philosophy for many years at University of Iowa. I think he's retired now. And he says in his introductions, I don't know if he's written a full autobiography yet. I've lost touch. I hope he's still alive. Actually, I haven't spoken to him in a decade. But he said that he was reluctantly a philosopher because he was under this Richard Rorty, the brilliant, wonderful Richard Rorty, but still announcing that philosophy is dead, metaphysics is dead. because they think of metaphysics as only some sort of absolutist thing, like Platonic thing. And so there can't be a relativist metaphysics. They think that's just somehow too loose, too hippie-ish or something, because they're stuck on some kind of absolutism. And so then, philosophy and the mirror of nature or something. Remember that book, wonderful book by Richard Rorty. And then after that, contingency, solidarity, and irony. All we can do is be art critics, political critics, and sociological critics. We can't do reality. That's the scientists have taken over, you know. And Derlinger felt that way once he got trained, but then he had to have a job. And when he discovered Buddhist philosophy, oh, wow, there's a reason now for philosophy. So he was reborn as a philosopher by discovering Vasubandhu and Nagarjuna and Dharmakirti, you know. And it was just made his life meaningful.
Yeah, well, it was that way in
Disney.
the dominant culture origins too, because Socrates thought he was doing something. He didn't think this was
Yes,
random. It was about healing the culture, healing yourself,
yes,
just finding true freedom and understanding reality. So it
exactly.
was there too. It
That's
belongs
right.
to all the cultures have this in one way or another. You know, it's
Yes,
just now that we got cut off, like you said. It's because I always say it's much easier to kill a bird and cut it open and say I know it than it is to learn how to live well with that bird and
very good.
understand really deeply what you share in your
Yes,
interwovenness. And
yes,
then you also, doesn't matter what kind of person you are, because I can be the worst person and I still can say, I know, because I have the science, as opposed to these traditions say, no, what you can know is going to depend on what kind of person you are. And then
yes,
obviously that's obviously important because it's what kind of world you're going to make. And so
yes.
this is what you get when science gets cut off from philosophy. You get a world that's degraded
That's
because
right.
no one thinks that they have to be a good person.
That's right. You were
Yeah.
that's absolutely right. And I was thinking, you're making me think that this whole thing we're having now with Trump and the MAGA poor MAGA people and so forth, this post-truth reality.
Right. Yeah.
So that means there's that's where of course Don Lopez is going to bury Buddha the scientist because it's all meaningless anyway, and there's no truth anyway. And it's all whatever, emptiness means it's all that's agree they make emptiness agree with the idea that nothingness is really what it is, and it's all pointless and meaningless, so you can say anything and do anything. Once you have to go beyond concept in some way, then that means that concepts are all just irrelevant. And that's a subtlety that the dogmaticists miss, actually. They think you have to dogmatically attain nirvana, but you can't. Nirvana is just being open-minded in samsara, basically.
Yeah, but you're
Really,
really
and
careful
happy, and
to
happy. And that's the point. So
yeah,
the other reason for wisdom is bliss is I think that our American Buddhists have put too much emphasis on the First Noble Truth because people have been ruled by fear for thousands of years. And so they think the way to get them going is to terrorize them more. And they're going to suffer more. But then, because they're already nihilists, you can't do that, and you can't terrorize them because nihilist has an anesthesia waiting for them just by blowing their brains out. They don't need nirvana, so you can't scare them into really finding the love at the heart of reality. The bliss and the joy and the love in reality. So that's why there's the third noble truth, and that's the only one that's really real. Is the third one. And it's therefore inviting and accepting. It's ready for everybody to realize it. So that's why I put wisdom as bliss, and then I pushed it into the mold of the Eightfold Path, which is the dualistic, Theravada thing. I never say I don't like Hinayana expression, and I don't like lesser vehicle or something. I call it individual vehicle
right.
because that's what it was for, to make the individual break out of the caste system and break out of the monism of Buddha's time, where they were the oppressed lower caste, but they were part of the god, that they were the foot of the god, while the Brahmin was the mouth.
Yeah.
And he needed more individualism in the people. Each one has their own godlike destiny, which is the hallmark of the beauty of Indian civilization. That's the truly great thing, of
Yeah.
India.
But you are really careful that we can't just get blissed out, that we got to learn. And the learning is a big part of the challenge for this culture too, because we all just want to I'm just going to have the non-dual meditation and I'm blissed out and I won't have any thoughts. And we just think that it's thoughtlessness and then I'm in bliss and I'm enlightened. But you're really careful to explain why no, you actually need learning.
Yes.
And otherwise, you're going to be possessed by concepts that you've pushed even further down into your
It's
unconscious.
really great. I really need you, and I need your help.
What? What?
You explain it even better. You explain it better than me.
That's
By
your
far.
book. You did a great job. No, it's fantastic because it's a common thing in America today because of the way we've so mishandled education, which is the Socratic and Buddha's imperative with Socrates.
Yes,
Education is central. And so,
educate. That's the great thing about it. It is.
yeah, yeah,
You need
yeah,
out the wisdom that's in the student.
yeah,
And
that's right.
you're just replicating your own supposed intelligence. You lead their intelligence out, and
Yeah,
then they get liberated, and then they do wonderful things. That's
yeah,
really, really important.
yeah.
And as the Dalai Lama said, the only qualification of a teacher is that makes it. It's not some pedigree. It's not some Rinpoche. It's not some Roshi certificate. The only thing that speaks for a teacher is the effect on the students and the opening of the students, the flowering of the students' abilities. That's the only reference that a teacher can ask
Mm,
for, and
mm,
that's the only thing you should look for in teachers. Are their students flowering?
yeah,
Or are they just more oppressed and trying to repeat the teacher or something? Then that's
yeah.
bad. That's
Yeah,
a really
well, I can say that you have always helped me to flower Bob Thurman, and I thank you. I know you have to you have more teaching to do today, but I know that I've experienced flowering from your teaching. So a
uh,
deep bow of gratitude
thank you,
to you.
Nico.
Thank you for
Are we
being
done?
here.
Are we done? Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign off to thank all of you out there. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, reflections, if you have ever encountered Bob's teachings, you can share your experience. If you haven't, get out there. He's got so many resources online and so
One
many
thing,
good books.
wait.
Yeah.
Do we have to stop right now? I'd like to go a little more. It says one other
Oh,
thing we
whoa.
didn't.
Yeah, go. I don't,
I
I'm not
wanted
going to
to tell
stop
one
you, Bob.
anecdote. I wanted to tell one anecdote and
Okay.
then make one point, which also it's good brownie points at the current moment. And that is that when I wrote my first trade book, like non-academic, or not only academic book, based on many academic discoveries and things, but trying to make it popular, the inner revolution, of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and real happiness. And in that one, at one point, I elaborated the concept of cool heroism. So, I mean, a kind of heroism where you would die rather than kill somebody else, instead of hot heroism where you're trained in the military to sacrifice your life when you're enraged and in order to take some other life. And so then people were saying to me, somebody interviewed me in doing those days, there were such thing as a book tour. And they said, well, where's all these cool heroes? You mean Jesus or Buddha or Socrates, or what is all the cool heroes? And I was almost stuck, for a second. And then I had a flash in my mind of many family situations, both birth family and current, and at that time current family. That was 40 years ago. And there's tempers going on between brothers, father and son. The males are at it, saying nasty things to each other or even pummeling a little. And who's in the middle of it? The woman, the sister, the mother. Like, you didn't mean that, dear. No, don't say that. No, don't. And getting pummeled in the middle, often, in many families, too many. And then I said, okay, 50% of humanity are the cool heroes. I said, 50%. So that came up out of desperation. and the women, in other words, and like today, somebody who said, I handed it to her, although I'm not into splitting the liberal vote at this dire moment in America, but I do love what she said the other day. What's her name? The wonderful female candidate who trying to get on voting lists. The Course in Miracles lady.
Marianne Williamson.
Yeah. She said 72 wars on the planet right now. People being killed, mile a minute, 72 places. Not one started by a woman, she'd say.
Yeah.
Not one of them started by a woman.
Yeah.
And, there's not one woman in Netanyahu's insane cabinet. There's not one woman in Hamas's insane thing. The Ayatollah is killing the women in Iran who pulled the trigger there. told the Hezbollah and the Hamas people to go commit suicide, because that'll provoke the crazy fringe government that Netanyahu is hiding from his own court cases, and they'll go nuts, And by the way, do you know October 7th? Do you know what it is, that date?
You mean this year?
October 7th. Just now
Yeah.
we had the terrible
Yeah.
Hamas
Yeah.
attack on October 7th, a
course.
horrendous thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But you know what another interesting point about that day?
I don't think I'm thinking of it right now. No.
It's
Tell me.
Putin's birthday.
Oh. Huh.
That's all I'll say about that. No, never mind. I won't go politics. But my point is, karma is a Darwinian theory where the mind is involved. And
Yeah.
I just want to mention that for your listeners, that Mind and Cosmos by the NYU philosopher who challenges the biologists that they've got to bring the mind back into evolution.
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of just genes, and mechanistic thing, because they won't get there otherwise. And he has really great, very conservative arguments on that. And his name is fleeing my 82-year-old brain, but I know him really well. But he's a great philosopher.
Well,
He
even
wrote
Bateson
Nowhere.
already talked about that, right? Gregory Bateson decades ago was saying that
Yeah,
evolution is a
the
mental
current guy.
process.
Sure.
But I'm saying it's not new. This is the thing where mind
No,
is
I know,
involved.
but that Mind and Cosmos is quite a good one.
Okay, I'll read it. Yeah.
And he says that why they're afraid of it and they won't do it is they think God will come back and the Inquisition will come back once you have mind. But the point is, karma theory is a Darwinian evolutionary theory with mind engaged with matter, and it isn't some God controlling it. It's all the mutual intersubjective minds having an influence. The point is being a factor to be considered, which then makes ethics evolutionary action, where when you're generous, then this changes your shape of your life.
Yeah.
And also it connects to the idea that the individual inherits some of the benefit of the fittest becoming more fit in life after life. It begins to bring the infinity of lives, the multiplicity of lives into biological reality, rather than sort of weird fantasy woo-woo thing, the table moving, voices in the dark, woo-woo thing was what they try to pretend it is. It actually becomes empirical, like the conservation of energy is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So within that, then the higher form of the human species is the female one. And there's no accident that Sophia is a goddess and Paramita is a goddess.
That's
and
right.
I just wanted to mention that. And so the wisdom side, it's like the dangerous goddess. You're calling it dangerous wisdom.
That's right.
I consider ignorance more dangerous than wisdom in a way, anyway. But the point is, the dangerous female is important. We need those females now to save this planet. And
the greatest threat to the psychosis that holds us is wisdom. That's why it's dangerous and why they push it away. If you're caught in it, it seems dangerous. So we have to oppress philosophy at every step of the way. So the idea is that it's dangerous because it feels like, and also it was to honor Buddha as the spiritual surgeon general. I say he's the only philosopher I know of who put the spiritual surgeon general's warning that says, handle this like a poisonous snake, because if you don't handle it, it's
right. Although I just want to say about that problem that the Nagarjuna says, misconceived emptiness is like grabbing a poisonous snake in the wrong way, or using a scientific mantra, scientific spell in the wrong way, and so on. And yes, that's true. But the danger he was referring to is the confusion, mixing of voidness with nothingness.
Yeah.
So nihilism is the danger. And that's why I don't hesitate to teach about emptiness to anybody in our dominant culture. Because who's educated in our dominant culture, because they're already gripped by the poison of nihilism.
Right.
And it's meaningless. And this, like the chairman of the philosophy department of Columbia, I heard him go on and on in the dialogue we were at. I had to restrain myself. And he's going, this is maturity. You have to accept it's all meaningless. You have to accept there's no point to it. You have to accept that it's an accident. You have to accept random this. I mean, on and on and on. that nihilism would just be the way of being a real person.
Yeah.
And it's in total, it makes you into a psychotic, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really wrong, and we have to deal with it. And women know that because they have to deal with what's right in front of them, and they know that we all do, and they try to get this guy cycling off in their mathematics and cycling off with their vengeance and cycling off with their narcissistic weird thing that they have to be practical, and we're gonna have breakfast. We're gonna have breakfast after that. So don't destroy all the chickens, whatever. Okay,
I
so that's
love
just
it.
we have a plug for the women. So they
I
should keep
like
it.
that.
I'm
I
totally for it. Okay.
appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Thank
All
you so
right.
much, Nicholas. I'm
Thank you.
delighted.
And thanks to all of you,
Let's
my
have another
friends.
talk. I'll have
Yeah.
to write a book.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll do it. I'll write one and you can come and we'll talk about it.
Okay, you
All
do it.
right.
You have a book? Do you have a book? I'll do a podcast with you.
Yeah. Well, I have two that I'm working on. I'm trying to get them out. So yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you're working draft, you want to deal with it, I'll do a podcast with you.
All right. Let's do it.
Thank
Well, that sounds.
Really, I love, one thing they won't do, they
Huh.
won't discuss with me. There are different translators conferences.
Yeah.
They have the sacred thing that everybody has to choose their own word. We're not going to have any agreed upon terms. That's really stupid.
Yeah.
Of course we can agree. We can, nobody has the word because translation is never perfect and it's always a changing thing. And when you translate something from one culture into another, it changes the culture
Yeah.
that you're going into. It's not like you're going to fit it into an existing culture. It's going to change the culture. So then you have to look at resonances of words and how they might develop. It's like grafting plants on each other, It's like a experimental science like that. It's
Yeah.
not just fixed things. There is the ultimate word. And
Yeah.
so we really need to discuss like Buddha, was Buddhahood, it was Bodhi and awakening, or is it enlightenment, or can it be both, or what? Tibetans came up with both, Sangye. And I'd love to have podcasts on that, for example.
Oh,
And
yeah.
for example, and get to convene people to discuss some of these terminologies. And it
Yeah.
would be great. And if you
Oh,
have
that's
if you have a working book, I'm sure it's fascinating. And just let me know when you want to try to do it. We'll do it in a course. I'm
yeah.
lazy.
No. A translators conference would be great. And it's so funny because of all philosophies, you would think that Buddhist people influenced by Buddha's philosophical thinking would understand this interwovenness of the
Yes.
cultures and the
Oh,
translation,
totally.
and the need for an ecology of mind to have that debate and discussion.
Totally.
I mean, it's
Did
really
you ever meet,
surprising.
did you ever meet my friend Tom Cleary?
I never
The
met
late
him, but of course I love his translations. They're so
Aren't they
wonderful.
amazing? Did you ever try to read his entire Flower Ornament Sutra?
You know what? I saw that you're doing it online. I have it and I've read a lot of it. And I actually think I'm going to try to go through it with you. It sounds like a fun thing to do. You
It's
you did you get
amazing.
through the whole thing?
Yes,
You did. Oh my gosh.
137 different sessions. I
37. All
never
right.
dreamed it would be so extensive, but because I had read parts of it like that before,
Yeah.
but I got into the sort of incantatory and imaginative, imagination stimulating aspect of it, which because it's like a different type of thing. It's like a vivid, it's like abstract expressionist words, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
It's
And
such a great sutra.
sort of
It's
just
so
flow with it.
incredible.
And I
Yeah.
did it for people because I thought I know it's very hard to read when you normally are reading something to extract meaning, and you're doing like that. Whereas this is painting with words,
Yeah.
and so I wanted people to be able to listen in a hot tub or something, or sitting or when jogging or in the zone. So and
Yeah.
I wanted to honor him because he was so assaulted and so dishonored, badly or disrespected, I should put. You can't dishonor such a great being. But he was so disrespected by academics in the East Asian field for so many years. It
Really?
was
I
really
didn't know that.
terrible. Yeah, I managed to get him a couple of NEH grants early on, and because he was from Harvard or something like that. But then he didn't do footnotes, and then he did so much that they were so jealous. And it was so good what he did with all those texts, that they were just really mean to him, and they denied him support, always, in a very bad way.
Mm.
So that's why I pledged to do it, and I want to try to I'm going to get rid of the visual and try to make a long audible out of it eventually.
Oh yeah, well that's easy. They can pull the
I asked
audio
the
off.
publisher to fund a studio to do it as an Audible, but they wouldn't do it. So, but I'm going to now take the soundtrack off this, and then I'll make some deal with them.
Yeah, yeah.
Wife, he has a beautiful wife. I don't know how she's doing financially, and I'm sure she's still there. And I'd like to have her have the royalty of it.
Oh,
And
that's
I love
wonderful.
the guy. He was my daughter fell in love with him when she was like 4 years old. She did. She wouldn't come out
Oh,
of the closet to have dinner unless he would ask her to come out. He was visiting with me when we were starting working on that flower ornament together with multiple languages, but we didn't have the funding to continue with it together. And then he just did it himself. He did it in an unheated apartment over a garage in Kobe, where the only heat was under the table, an electric thing,
yeah.
coil in there. And so his fingers would freeze after a certain amount of typing or whatever, and then he'd have to hold it on the table, and then he would do
Wow.
it.
It's a beautiful book.
So
Anybody,
deprived.
I've recommended it before as maybe the most psychedelic text,
Oh, it's
and
super.
as a
It
beautiful,
really
it's
is.
just so.
And when I started doing it, and then people got to say the word went around a little bit that not hugely, but a little bit. Somebody wrote me from Berkeley, and they said, you know, in the 60s or no, 70s or something, I read it aloud 3 times. I couldn't stop. I
Wow.
said, I have that email somewhere, but I haven't found the guy because I was in during COVID, so I couldn't travel. But uh, I wrote back, did you record it? No.
Yeah.
Anyway, listen,
Yeah.
great talking to you.
So
Dedicate the
great.
merit. May everybody become Manjushri, modern or pre-modern or postmodern, whatever it is, as soon as possible, so they'll all be happy.
I
Okay?
love it. Thank you for dedicating the merit. I appreciate it, Bob. Take care, all of
Thank
you
you,
out there,
Nico.
my friends,
A
and
real
we'll
pleasure.
see you next
Thank
time.
you.